No, it's recorded.
Okay, so I welcome all of you to this third and final day of the webinar on theatre and performance in foreign language education, hosted by the Jindal Global, OP Jindal Global University and the Global Languages Center of the OP Jindal Global University. Thanks to the precious and insightful contributions made by Dr. Milind Bramme, Associate Professor at IIT Madras, and Professor Manfred Schewe, Professor Emeritus, University College, Cork, Ireland, I am sure you would all agree that the past 2 days have been rather fulfilling. Whereas Dr. Bramme highlighted the point that theatre can be seen as a means to engage critically with the self and the other in the field of German studies and foreign language education, Professor Manfred Schewe, through a narration of his life's story, creatively interwove the various historical developments that have occurred in the field of performativity in language education so far. Brilliant. And by the way, it's Professor Schewe's birthday, so herzlichen Glückwunsch zum Geburtstag.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch, yeah.
We would have loved to sing, yes, but we're perhaps going to sing again, yeah. So we're going to sing maybe later. So it is basically the field of performativity in language education, yeah. That was really the focus of his paper, and where he also underlined the need to lay greater emphasis on the idea of performativity in higher education. Now, a little organizational detour, and this is a little link that I want to share with you. In the chat, please look into the chat here. Just let's quickly go to the chat. And it's a Google form. It's a feedback form that I have made for all those of you who've joined us since the 26th, well, and today, to please kindly fill this form. So that we get a feedback from you. Yeah, this is also, in addition to being a webinar, this is also going to be a performance evening today. And since it is, well, with all its advantages, still a small constraint that we do not have this live interaction with the audience. So please feel free to use the digital possibilities that we have. That is, there is a small little reaction icon there, down there. There's a chat box. So please do comment and let the students know how you felt, how their performance was. But in addition to that, please also fill in this feedback form, and I'm going to share it right away. And please let us know how you felt, what you felt about the webinar. The second point is obviously that we want to keep in touch. So I'd like to know you better, your institution, and obviously your email address, so that we can keep in touch. All right. So I'll just share the Google form right away. Now, before moving on to the students' performances, I'd like to bring to your attention, I've already done it, sorry. Okay, improvisation. So now we move on to the much awaited event of the day. We perform, we learn. Now, this event is unique in nature since it is essentially a part of the students' learning process, and yet has been turned into an event. The idea behind making it an event is to give the students an authentic experience of performing while learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, your hosts tonight are two very bright and committed students of the Jindal School of International Affairs, Aryaman Sehgal and Anushka Singh. And we have amongst us, live on keyboard with us, as Aditya Surender from the Jindal Global Business School, who will be accompanying the entire narrative of today's evening with his musical notes. So a big round of digital applause for all the students.
Hallo, ich bin Anushka Singh.
Und ich bin Ariman Sehgal.
And we welcome all of you to an evening of short performances by the students of JGU. So that you may get the best experience of the performances, we would like you to request you to note the following. Kindly keep yourself muted and keep your video camera switched off during the performances. Go to the video settings and click on the option Hide Non-Video Participants. Please click on the gallery view for all the performances except for the last one. Kindly change to the speaker view for the last performance. We all are aware that this is an online context and unlike a real theater. So we will not be able to display your appreciation in the form of applause. In order to bridge the communication gap, we request you to kindly use the chat for telling us if you liked your performance.
It has been over a year since the first lockdown was announced in India. Ever since the corona pandemic has affected us in many ways, today's performances are dedicated to these times. The past year has witnessed so many corona songs. Many of them were parodies of popular songs. One such parody that became viral was the Corona song based on the song Havana, originally sung by the Cuban-American singer-songwriter Camila Cabello. To set the mood of today's evening, we have with us Anushka Sharma from the Jindal Global Business School to present Corona Onana.
Corona Onana, das ganz schön leicht, das denn Corona Onana. Hab keinen Bock auf Quarantäne, nee. Alle Schulen werden leer, auf Fußball gibt's nicht mehr. Corona Onana. Sagratan in jeder Tasche, so ein sicher Sack, immer schon die Excel-Flasche. Die passt noch rein, in Bus und Bahn trägt jeder Maske. Erkennst du kein, überall Hamsterkäufe, pack die Nudeln ein. Seitdem das hier bei uns ist, mag ich nur noch Homeoffice. Alle Leute sind Säuger, ich niese wie am Beuger. Atschuk! Corona Onana, das ganze Land ist still Corona Onana. Hab keinen Bock auf Quarantäne, nee. Alle Schulen werden leer, auf Fußball gibt's nicht mehr. Corona Onana. Danke.
The lockdown created an uncanny pressure on many of us, forcing us to revisit our concepts of love and togetherness. On one hand, people were indeed grateful that they got to spend a lot of time with their loved ones. On the other hand, many cases of domestic violence and pitfalls in the relationships between husbands and wives were reported. Our next performance is a light-hearted comedy sketch written by the famous German comedian Vico von Bülow, popularly known as Loriot. The skit is about a husband and a wife who are having breakfast together. What triggers an argument between them is something as harmless as a Frühstücksei, a breakfast egg. Presenting Thania Mariam Chon from the Jindal Global Business School as Bertha and Sanitya Sharma from the Jindal School of International Affairs as Herman.
Bertha,
Ja,
das Ei ist hart. Das Ei ist hart.
ich habe es gekocht.
Wie lange hat das Ei denn gekocht?
So viele Eier sind gar nicht gesund.
Ich meine, wie lange dieses Ei denn gekocht hat.
Du willst das doch immer 4,5 Minuten.
Das weiß ich,
Was fragst du denn dann?
weil dieses Ei nicht 4,5 Minuten gekocht haben kann.
Ich koche es aber jeden Morgen 4,5 Minuten.
Wieso ist es dann mal so hart und mal so weich?
Ich weiß es nicht. Ich bin kein Huhn.
Ach, und woher weißt du, wann das Ei gut ist?
Ich nehme es nach 4,5 Minuten heraus. Mein Gott,
Nach der Uhr oder wie?
nach Gefühl? Eine Hausfrau hat das im Gefühl.
Im Gefühl? Was hast du im Gefühl?
Habe es im Gefühl, wann das Ei weich ist?
Aber es ist hart. Vielleicht stimmt damit deinem Gefühl was nicht.
Mit meinem Gefühl stimmt es nicht? Ich stehe den ganzen Tag in der Küche, mache die Wäsche, bringe deine Sachen in Ordnung, mache die Wohnung gemütlich, ärgere mich mit den Kindern rum und du sagst, mit meinem Gefühl stimmt es nicht?
Ja. Wenn ein nach Gefühl kocht, kocht es eben nur zufällig genau 4,5 Minuten.
Es kann dir doch ganz egal sein, ob das Ei zufällig 4,5 Minuten kocht. Hauptsache, es kocht 4,5 Minuten.
Ich hätte nur gern ein weiches Ei und nicht ein zufällig weiches Ei. Es ist mir egal, wie lange es kocht.
Aha, das ist dir egal? Es ist dir also egal, ob ich 4,5 Minuten in der Küche schufte?
Nein.
Aber es ist nicht egal. Das Ei muss nämlich 4,5 Minuten kochen.
Das habe ich doch gesagt.
Aber eben hast du doch gesagt, es ist dir egal.
Ich hätte nur gern ein weiches Ei.
Gott, was sind Männer primitiv?
Ich bringe sie um. Morgen bringe ich sie um.
Es war ja super, Tanya und Sanidhya. The corona crisis forced many of us to revisit our sense of free time. We started valuing small pleasures of life. The first poem is titled Vergnügungen. It is an example of Catalogue's poesy, where Bertolt Brecht simply enlists random things that gives pleasure. Gottfried Benn penned down a counterpart of Brecht's poem and gave it the title Was Schlimmest, which highlights the ironies of missed opportunities. A poetry slam is a competition arts event in which poets perform spoken word poetry before a live audience and a panel of judges. Culturally, poetry slams are a break with the past image of poetry as an elitist or a rigid art form. While formats can vary, slams are often loud and lively, with audience participation, cheering, and dramatic delivery. Hip hop music and urban culture are strong influences, and backgrounds of participants tend to be diverse. Shreyansh Sankla from the Jindal Global Law School and Ryan Bhagwagar from the Jindal School of International Affairs have given the poems their own meaning and will present them in a form of a poetry slam.
Vergnügungen. Der erste Blick aus dem Fenster am Morgen. Das wiedergefundene alte Buch. Begeisterte Gesichter. Schnee. Der Wechsel der Jahrzeiten. Die Zeitung. Der Hund. Die Dialektik. Duschen, Schwimmen, alte Musik, bequeme Schuhe, begreifen, neue Musik, schreiben, pflanzen, reisen, singen, freundlich sein.
Gut gemacht. Aber weißt du, was schlimm ist? Ich sage dir, was schlimm ist. Wenn man kein Englisch kann, von einem guten englischen Kriminalroman zu hören, der nicht ins Deutsche übersetzt ist. Bei Hitze ein Bier sehen, das man nicht bezahlen kann. Einen neuen Gedanken haben, den man nicht in einen Höllenfels einwickeln kann. Wie es die Professoren tun, nachts auf Reisen, Wellen schlagen hören und sich sagen, dass sie das immer tun. Sehr schlimm eingeladen sein, wenn zu Hause die Räume stille, der Kaffee besser und keine Unterhaltung nötig ist. Am schlimmsten, nicht im Sommer sterben, wenn alles hell ist und die Erde für Spaten leicht.
Zwei Männer schauen durch die gleichen Balken. Einer sieht den Schlamm und einer die Zähne.
The pandemic shook the tourism industry. Similarly, fishermen too had to face a setback. Many simply did not go to the sea as the restaurants were closed. In what follows is an adaptation of the short story titled Anekdote zur Senkung der Arbeitsmoral by Heinrich Böll. Heinrich Böll wrote this story at the time of the Wirtschaftswunder and critiqued the fast-paced business mentality of capitalistic society of his times, and contrasted it with the fisherman who was satisfied with less. We have for you Soshri Mukhopadhyay from the Jindal School of International Affairs as the tourist and Shubh Agarwal from the Jindal Global Business School as the fisherman. In this adaptation of the short story, there are two rounds. The theatrical presentation in the first round is loyal to the text in order to give the effect of a play in a play. the platform of the social media website YouTube has been used. An attempt has been made to employ Brechtian techniques of different endings and not presenting an illusion of reality on stage. In the second round, Shrup and Sushri have tampered with the text to adapt it to today's times. Their idea is when system fails, humanity rises to the occasion. Hence, the second version ends with the tourist asking the fisherman if he has some fish for her, attempting to contribute in her own way to the well-being of a fellow human being in the time of the crisis.
Hi Shub, hast du uns das Stück auf YouTube gesehen? Schau mal, wir haben so viele Likes bekommen. Wir sind jetzt Stars.
Echt?
Komm, lass uns das Video anschauen.
Okay, los geht's.
Shub, you need to share the sound. It's not clear.
Ich fühle mich fantastisch.
Now it's okay. Go back.
Sie werden heute einen guten Fang machen. Aber man hat mir gesagt, dass das Wetter günstig ist. Sie werden also nicht ausfahren. Oh, Sie fühlen sich nicht wohl?
Nein, ich fühle mich großartig. Ich habe mich nie besser gefühlt. Ich fühle mich fantastisch.
Aber warum fahren Sie dann nicht aus?
Weil ich heute Morgen schon ausgefahren bin.
War der Fang gut?
Ja, er war so gut, dass ich nicht noch einmal ausfahren brauche. Ich habe 4 Hummer und fast 2 Dutzend Makrelen gefangen. Ich habe sogar für morgen und übermorgen genug. Möchten Sie rauchen?
Ja, danke. Ich will mich ja nicht in Ihre persönlichen Angelegenheiten mischen, aber stellen Sie sich mal vor, Sie führen heute ein zweites, ein drittes, vielleicht sogar ein viertes Mal aus und Sie würden 3, 4, 5, 10 Dutzend Makrelen fangen. Stellen Sie sich das mal vor. Sie würden sich in spätestens einem Jahr einen Motor kaufen können, in 2 Jahren ein zweites Boot. Eines Tages würden Sie ein Fischrestaurant eröffnen und dann.
Was dann?
Dann können Sie beruhigt hier im Hafen sitzen, in der Sonne dosen und auf das herrliche Meer blicken.
Aber das tue ich ja schon jetzt. Ich sitze beruhigt am Hafen und dose. Nur Ihr Klicken hat mich dabei gestört.
Ups, tut mir leid. Hallo Leute, wenn euch das Video gefallen hat, dann bitte liken, teilen und hier unten kommentieren.
Ihr könnt auch unseren YouTube-Kanal abonnieren. Tschüss. Social, weißt du was? Einem Jahr gibt es die Pandemie. Leute wollen ja nicht so viel reisen. Sie haben Angst.
Ja, Da hast du recht. Und ein Fischer kann ja in diesen Zeiten auch nicht so kühl sein. Egal wo, ob in Indien oder in Deutschland. Es geht den Fischern wirklich sehr schlecht.
Okay, dann machen wir für unser Publikum eine zweite Runde.
Alles
Klar?
klar?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, los!
Sie werden heute einen guten Fang machen. Aber man hat mir gesagt, dass das Wetter günstig ist. Sie werden also nicht ausfahren. Oh, Sie fühlen sich nicht wohl?
Es hat bessere Tage gegeben. Aber woher kommen Sie?
Ich komme aus Indien.
Aha, wie schön. Und Sie sprechen so gut Deutsch.
Danke. Ich habe an der Jindal Global University Deutsch gelernt.
Schön. Hatten Sie denn keine Probleme beim Reisen?
Doch, aber es ging schön. Es hat es einfach satt. Ich wollte einfach von zu Hause weg sein.
Mussten Sie rauchen?
Nein, nein, nicht während der Pandemie.
Oh ja, tut mir leid.
Sie fahren also nicht aus.
Nein. Wissen Sie, vor der Pandemie hatten wir so viele Leute. Jetzt haben aber alle Restaurants zu. Keiner will unsere Fische mehr kaufen.
Schade. Aber schauen Sie die positive Seite. Sie haben jetzt mehr Zeit zum Nachdenken. Planen Sie für die Zukunft.
Sie haben recht.
Haben Sie einen Fisch für mich? Ich habe Hunger.
Danke.
Das war großartig, Shubha und Sorcery. Absolutely amazing. While human beings were locked in their houses, nature got time to recuperate. One saw rare species of birds and animals out on the streets. The following performance is based on a poem called Otto's Mops, written by the Austrian writer and poet Ernst Jandl. Sochitra Mondal from the Jindal School of International Affairs and Chiku, in a guest appearance, will be presenting an adaptation of the poem which has turned it into a play in not 3 but 4 acts.
Erster Akt. Otto's Mops trots. Otto. Fort Mops. Fort. Otto's Mops hops fort. Otto. Zozo. Zweiter Akt. Otto holt Koks. Otto holt Obst. Otto horcht Otto. Mops. Mops. Otto hofft. Getagt. Ottos Mops klopft. Otto. Komm, Mops. Komm. Ottos Mops kommt. Ottos Mops kotzt. Otto. Oh Gott, oh Gott. Vierter Akt. Mops, Mops, sagst du. Aber mein Name ist Chiku. Chiku ist gerne Äpfel. Chiku schläft auch gern. Chiku ist froh. Otto ist jetzt immer zu Hause. Otto ist immer wütend. Aber Chiku ist Ottos Freund. Danke.
We now come to the last performance of the evening, which we have named Phule Zeitgeist. It is a performance which has been a work in progress and is experimental in nature. The script consists of a collage of random quotes by famous personalities that begin with Ish. Hence, the subtitle is Ish Zitaten Theater. Each quote today has an aura of its own. It brings with it the story of the times. To spell out a quote requires one to become more just a dramatic persona. The characters in this performance are not human beings, but the symbols of their times. Through this presentation, it has been our attempt to revisit the quotes in the times of the pandemic. The figures are played by Aditya Surender, Aishwarya Nair, and Amrita Jain, and Erika Bajju from the Jindal Global Business School, and Ashish from the Jindal School of International Affairs. I request everyone to kindly shift to the speaker view for this performance.
Ich denke, also bin ich.
Ich handle, also bin ich.
Ich lerne, also bin ich.
Ich esse, also bin ich.
Ich liebe, also bin ich.
Ich hasse also bin ich.
Ich manipuliere und werde manipuliert.
Ich bin ein Mann. Dank daran.
Ich bin eine Frau mit einer männlichen Anmaßung.
Ich wäre lieber Cyborg als Cupid.
Ich bin frei, frei wie ein Kind.
Ich bin der Geist, der stets verneint.
Ich bin kein Mensch. Ich bin in Dynamit.
Ich habe einen
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Ich brauche keine Gnade. Ich will Gerechtigkeit.
Ich habe gelernt, dass man nie zu klein dafür ist, einen Unterschied zu machen.
Ich glaube fest daran, dass eine bessere Welt möglich ist.
Ich bin geimpft. Und du?
As the convention goes, we would have opened the floor for an informal interaction between the participants and the audience. However, since we are restricted to an online mode, we would now like to share with you the testimonials of the participants of what they have actually learned from their own performances. We now have with us Tanya Mariam John, followed by Ryan Bhagwagar.
Hello, everyone. So, first of all, this has been a great experience for us. And I'm using this opportunity to thank Shruti ma'am for this wonderful opportunity, especially during this pandemic time where we really don't get to spend time outside house. We're just sitting at home and it's really difficult for all of us. So especially during this time where she brought up this wonderful opportunity for all of us, where we could actually put up a play and it's been really wonderful experience. And to be honest, from my personal opinion, I think this is the best way to learn a language, because we don't realize we are learning this. We don't realize you're not forcing something. We're just learning it in our own way, in a very fun and interactive way. And I think this is the best way to learn a language, because I got to learn a lot of words, a lot of new words, and their pronunciation, and I got to learn about the culture more. So I think this was the best experience I've had learning a new language. And we were actually able to put all of this together with a lot of practice and everything. And since it's a virtual mode, I think it has increased my confidence on a level, because if it was the physical mode, I would have been a little more tensed. So this is something new which we're all doing here. And I think personally, this has been a very beautiful experience. And again, I would like to thank Shruti ma'am for this. And thank you all. Thank you so much.
Servus, Leute. Zuerst war ich sehr nervös. I shy away from social gatherings and enjoy my own solitude. Naturally, this was a very different feeling for me, and I was definitely not going to be in my comfort zone. The professor had told Shreyansh and me to prepare a rap battle using the 2 old poems given to us. Thinking about singing in front of so many people I do not know made me even more nervous. And after discussing about the rap battle, both Shreyansh and I had agreed that that would not be feasible. A couple of days later, both of us, along with the professor's assistance and guidance, came up with something which you just saw. It wasn't a rap battle, but a poetry slam. Again, my poem was to talk about the negative aspects of life, like cold beer, hot sun, but no money. And fortunately for me, my part was to be expressionless. And I chose the music that I chose because I knew that my poem was not all that happy going as my colleagues, and that it needed something with a relatively darker tone to it. Even now, I think I was able to perform because I cannot see you, the audience. However, it was a rather creative experience coming up with a song based on a century-old poem, scouring the internet for suitable music. Though I wish I could have mixed Rammstein with the poem. Maybe next year.
Dankeschön, Ryan und Dania.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Aryaman, but I think I too have something to speak for whatever we have done. I would first of all like to thank all our honorable guests who have spared their precious time and are along with us today. And I think I am most thankful to Professor Shruti Jain, who actually conceived of this idea, of doing something online, doing a play, and creating this whole event. Even during the time of this pandemic, coronavirus pandemic. I mean, when Professor tried to convince me of this idea of me being involved in Heinrich Boll's play, I felt the idea to be a little weird. I mean, who does a play online? Plays always look good in a physical format. But I think what we have been able to achieve through this is truly game changing. We have set new expectations for other people. We have shown that yes, even though we are close, we still can, even though we are apart, we still can come close, and we still can be connected. There's nothing that can, create differences among us if we are willing to close those differences. I think this is something that's truly amazing. Being optimistic in such negative times. I think this is what Professor Shruti has taught us. The preparation for this play in itself was so difficult that it took us around 15 to 20 recordings, in all, and around 4 to 5 hours
to prepare that small 3-minute YouTube video, the recording that we all saw on YouTube. So this whole event in itself is such an amazing, a game-changing thing that we can't even think of. I'm really thankful to Professor Shruti, who really conceived of this idea. And also I'm very thankful to all my co-participants who really were receptive to this idea and, were optimistic about how things would go and really gave their best. And at the end, I'm also really thankful to our guests for whom we are actually existing, right? For whom we are actually performing. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for becoming a part of this event. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This will be a brief testimonial, but I wanted to just thank Professor Shruti for giving me and Chico a performance to play in this. And I must confess, I was skeptical at first for performing on an online platform. But one fine day, Professor Shruti messaged in the WhatsApp group and asked, "Does anybody have a pug?" And I said, "Yes, I have one." And that's where it all started. From the rehearsals to executing the play on this day, it was all a memorable experience and a learning experience. Performing a German play, of course, helped me to get another step close to the German language. And that's all. Danke.
Good evening, everybody. And I am a very shy person and I don't sing. And it was really ma'am who just called me one day and she was like, "Can you sing?" And I was like, "No, ma'am, I only sing in my bathroom or when I'm alone at house." And then she was like, No, just try, just sing. And then after that, the way, she always makes things doable. And I mean, I want to thank Aditya also for, playing such beautiful karaoke for me and being there, even if it's a meeting at 11 p.m, everybody's there. And ma'am, I have a doubt at 2 a.m in the morning and she's like, yeah, okay, you need to pronounce this like this and that. I mean, it is really good experience and I want to really thank ma'am for giving me a chance. And thank you everyone for coming today.
So I would just like to add my brief testimonial to this. So I was not that good at German because this online format was not so friendly to me, especially. But Professor Shruti really trusted in my skills and she told me, no, it's fine. You will be able to pull off a good show. And along with my co-participants, my colleagues who were also really friendly, they motivated me to explore more. And even in all the dialogues I spoke, I learned new things. And I felt just like how Professor told us that this is the best way to learn a language, by practicing, by performing plays, by actually speaking it instead of just theory. So I am really grateful to Professor and all the co-participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so very much. That brings us to the end of our performances for the day. Thank you for being a lovely audience. We hope you enjoyed the performances. Over to you, Dr. Jain, for the panel discussion.
God, I'm gutted. Thank you so much, Ariman. Thank you so much. This has really been wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So now we move on to the concluding session of this webinar, which is a panel discussion on the significance of experimentation, creativity, and performance in foreign language education. The idea behind this panel discussion was to give the webinar a rounded ending by putting loose ends together and summarizing what was discussed in the past 2 days. But there's also another point, and that was maybe laying a foundation for the future possibilities of engaging with this theme from a different perspective. So to discuss today's topic, we have with us 3 panelists, Ms. Puneet Kaur, Dr. Swati Acharya, and Dr. Yan Helge Weidemann. Let me please introduce, though they don't need any introduction, well, but let me please do it. Let me please follow the protocol. Well, Ms. Puneet Kaur, as you all know, she is the project head German in 1000 schools, Goethe-Institut, New Delhi. It's a project that supports and promotes the teaching of German in government schools across the country. Puneet is also responsible for promoting the teaching of German in universities and colleges. From 2008 to 2012, she was project manager for the PASH project, a global project for schools promoted by the German Foreign Office. Puneet is also a founding member and president of the Indo-German Teachers Association, InDaF, a registered society with over 1,000 members. Since 2014, she's the General Secretary of the International German Teachers Association, IDV. This is the umbrella organization of all German Teachers Association worldwide. Puneet, I welcome you. Next on the panel is Dr. Swati Acharya. Dr. Swati Acharya is an associate professor and coordinator of the German section of the Department of Foreign Languages, Savitribai, Phule, Pune University. She has a PhD from the Center of German Studies, JNU. The title of her dissertation was The Colonial Discourse in the Films of Werner Herzog. Dr. Acharya has been a fellow of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. She has been teaching and researching in the area of German studies since 1992. Her areas of research interest are contemporary German literature, post-colonial literatures, gender studies, literature and film, and migration and literature and film. She has published in numerous research papers in reputed international journals. Welcome, Swati. And the third, last but not the least, is Dr. Yan Helge Weidemann. All those of you who have been with us on the past 2 days, during the past 2 days, have already interacted with Yan Helge. And so let me introduce him to you in short. Dr. Yan Helge Weidemann joined the Department of Germanic and Romance Studies of the Delhi University as DAAD lector, DAAD lecturer, as they call it in English, in the month of August 2020. And until 2018, he had been teaching in Guangzhou and Shanghai in China for 6 years. He received, he did his MA in film studies at the University of Southampton in the UK. He completed his PhD in literature at Jacobs University, Bremen in 2012, writing about cinematic experience from the perspective of media anthropology. I welcome all of you to this panel discussion. So maybe, I guess I need a little time. Would you please just first start with your impressions of the plays, the performances of the students that you watched?
If I may begin, fantastic. I am so overwhelmed. I have really no words. In one of the comments, I actually wrote, ich bin sprachlos, and I mean it as a very, very big compliment. What a performance, and how many ideas and how many things coming together. I mean, so many media really merging together, and the confidence, the creativity of the students as well as the mentor. We can clearly congratulate you and the entire team, because I know the best thing about performance in any form is teamwork. And if you can achieve that, hats off to you. Hut ab.
Puneet.
If I might add, I think the motivation was there. Quite obviously, the compliment goes to the teacher that she could motivate so many of them to overcome all their shyness, their hesitation, their stage fright, and appear here today in a very novel kind of medium. I really loved the choice. These, for example, that story by Heinrich Böhler, I think one read it, I don't know when, and to see it sort of performed today in a very different context. I like that little twist that was also there in the Corona, the second part of the story. I think Böhler would have been proud of you if he was around today. And I just loved the last presentation with the Ich. I think it was brilliant. And the choices, and then the students also read it out nicely. I think, Shruti, well done to you, well done to the students. And it was the sheer vastness of it all, what all one saw. That was, and the singing and the rap and the happiness and the bit of anger also at times, maybe. They all were palpable. So well done.
Great. Yan.
In general, I mean, I just couldn't agree more. It was a wonderful performance, wonderful performances by everybody. I think we have seen that more or less everything we talked about in theory, the importance of an open-minded teacher or instructor, the openness to engage with a foreign culture, the ease suddenly with which you use a foreign language, which you are not surrounded by, but very distant from. The joy that is there in the performances, and also the sheer like happiness and intellect and everything that was in the last video assemblage, like where we got so many juxtaposition points of view. It was amazing, and I think this was everything we talked about in action.
That was precisely. I mean, I just don't know. It just happened. So this was something that we did not plan. So in fact, until yesterday, we uploaded the YouTube and we got the likes from our various students and fellow colleagues. So it has been a work in progress throughout. So right from beginning, I conceived of the idea way back in February, actually, as late as February. No, actually January. Yeah, I had some ideas. But then slowly and steadily, I initially thought we'll just do a Lorio show perhaps. And then ideas started flowing in, and then there was no stopping to it, So it just has been really a phase where, ideas just came in. So I cannot even say that I planned it out. And yeah, I knew it. So I don't have that. I don't know. It just happened. And obviously it happened because of the students, The moment I said, yeah, who has a pug? I just don't know. I was just so crazy at that moment. I said, yes, I have a beautiful idea and I need a pug for that. And I said, well, who has a pug? And Shochitra said, I have one. And I said, okay, fine. Would you like to try? And it just fitted. Shochitra just did it so well. He was brilliant at Otto. And the fact, and we understood, we discussed the form. It is Ernst Jandl and it's a poem. And to actually make it into an act, the idea was, because if you look at the poem, it's hardly understandable, especially physically. The poem looks, the form wise, it looks like, what is this? And to bring in some expressions, to bring and enact it actually looked like a story. It actually looked like enacting. And that's precisely where, the change in form actually already automatically decided itself. The form, the entire process kind of decided what form we should be taking. So it was very, very interesting for me as well. So I would like to then also start with the 3 points, the 3 keywords of today's panel discussion. So it's about creativity, experimentation, and performance. I'd like to start with perhaps experimentation. And now in his essay on experimental theater, Brecht says the theater organized experiments which were to increase its powers of entertaining, and experiments which were to increase the powers of instruction. Now, Brecht made full use of technology to increase his power of instruction. What I tried to do was exactly, try to use technology as well in this Corona-induced turn to the digital platform. Your views on this? Is this possible? Of course, we have seen some examples, but I would like to see in your contexts whether you have seen other versions, other examples that actually deal with the digital platform and learning in that sense. Experimentation need not only be the experimentation forms, but there are so many other things that go with experimentation. Yan Helge, would you like to go first?
Yes, sure. Thank you. I think that over the past, let's say, roughly 15 years, maybe, we have already been using very modern technology to listen to podcasts, to look at video lectures, to do many things in this kind of general technological realm that you are talking about. We've also at universities seen like these massive online open courses more or less come and go. The technology was there to a certain extent, but the expected outcome didn't really materialize in the sense of, okay, really spreading it worldwide and everybody has the same access and everything. This forced experimentation that we're going through right now in terms of the coronavirus pandemic, I actually think pushes us further in that we all now have to adapt to the new technologies. I think there is a positive aspect amongst all the rubble that we are now more confident, more or less each and every one of us, in the future to say, well, if it's a hybrid conference and I couldn't go physically, well, then now I have no problem attending virtually. Things like this, also with the infrastructure upgrades that are being done more or less as we speak around the world, is a positive thing. On the other hand, like in terms of experimentation, I just want to share with you a couple of weeks ago, the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra had a model performance. So like the first one in more than a year after closing during the last lockdown in Berlin. And so everybody got a corona test, everybody got a special deal like from the Berlin government to be able to attend like it used to be normal in a very large group, this performance. And in the end, the musicians, the audience, the conductor, nobody wanted to leave the room. I mean, the people, and I include myself, I'm going to kiss the floor of the Delhi University classroom as soon as I'm allowed back in. So to a certain extent, while there are positive outcomes, more interaction may be possible. Also, as we heard in the testimonials, students taking part that wouldn't have felt comfortable taking part in a real classroom situation. I think we see some positive things, but in general, I have a very bleak picture of where this corona experiment has led us right now.
All right. So forced. We are forced to experiment. Yeah. So that would be the key word. Puneet.
I agree to some extent with Jan Helge on this, but at the same time, let's also sort of accept that a lot of this, I'm talking about a lot of this theater, a lot of what's happening in the metros is now more accessible to people who live far away from these places also. That's the positive side of it. You know, you quite often heard from people who are living in somewhat smaller towns to say, okay, all this happens in Delhi and we can't go, even within, say, I'm from Delhi, so I can talk from here. Within Delhi or within one of our large cities, access is at times difficult, getting there, traffic, this, that. So it does give you a little more access. I would definitely look at that as a positive aspect. Yeah, but definitely seeing something live, I agree with you, to be there, to see it, and especially theatre, to sort of see the actors on stage. I remember the first time I was in London and I went and saw a play there in Covent Garden in Leicester Square somewhere. I said, wow, there's actually the actors up there. You know, it's that whole feeling that you could probably just go and touch them. It's amazing. Yeah. And so that is, of course, missing. That is definitely missing. But I also think it's somewhat that part won't come. But as far as the other things go, I think it's also work in progress. On the one hand, people are still at the we are forced into this. Everybody's just stumbled, and everybody's doing it also. I think given a little time, some formats will evolve, which will use this particular platform, these digital platforms a little better, will be able to innovate on them. So we are still too early. It's still too early in the day to say where is it exactly going. It does offer some possibilities. What exactly are these possibilities? Will this survive this corona period? How will they mutate? Maybe a dirty word to use these days, but something will emerge. I don't think it will go away 100% corona in the post-corona period. But it does offer some possibilities, and especially geographically, I think it gives access to a lot more people. That's where I see the positive side of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Swati, please.
Well, I would focus only on the positive things, as I always do. I mean, ideal things are there in life, of course. I mean, who denies beauty and the blissful presence of ideal situations? But I mean, the very fact that we are talking like this as if we are sitting in front of each other, I have never met this wonderful gentleman called Yan Helge Weidemann in the whole of my life so far. And I think whenever I take the name, I feel, well, of course I know him. I have done a conference with him in August, and now we are together. Puneet, I have not met in years, although I know her, and I have met her in earlier times, pre-corona times. But I mean, we wouldn't have come together like this. Our universities would have cribbed who will grant the travel expenses, this, that. I mean, physically, I don't think if you had organized this beautiful thing in Sonipat all by yourself, we wouldn't have been able to participate, and we wouldn't have been able to adore your students the way we did this evening. So I am just full of positivity, and positive in a different way, no? Because positive is a very ambiguous and dangerous word these days. Yeah, I mean, all my life I've been saying this to myself and others: be positive, be positive. I dare not say this now. The other thing is, apart from this mobility and geographical flexibility and all that, I mean, imagine we as teachers and as students have been accessing internet and digital modes, etc., in our Fremdsprachenunterricht, in our German classes. But that was all always on a passive level. We always consumed whatever was made by others, whether it was in the form of podcasts or some conversations or half-hour exercises or even YouTube things. We were not activated to become acteur. And now see the way your students have now ruled the YouTube channel and earned their likes, and the way my students work here and all that stuff, we have literally become the acteur. So the famous quotation that the world, it is the job of the real thinkers to change it, not just to interpret it. We are changing it. And I'm so happy about it. And I want to thank your students for one very particular thing, that this entire pandemic thing, one of your students also said it, it was getting bored and all that. This ennui, this boredom, the Langeweile is the worst enemy we are having right now. And we don't know how to fight it. And your students did it today. And they did it for all of us. It is therapeutic. I mean, what more can we want? I mean, I'm not going to say, let Corona be here now that we are having these access opportunities. I'm never going to say that, you know it. But while it is there, let's explore so many other things, so many other modes, and change something.
Well said. And I would like to just add, I mean, the word therapeutic, a colleague of mine asked, yes, you've put up all this. Yeah, I mean, in the middle, amidst Corona, I said it's therapy for me. Really, it was therapy, and trying to fight what you've just described, the ennui, the boredom. And also, I mean, after the whole, the first phase was, looking for digital tools, getting to know the digital platform. So I was learning.org. I was here, I was there, I was doing Kahoot. And after that, all of a sudden, something just set in, even my students enjoyed it, no doubt. We were doing quizzes. And then I said, what now? And there I said, well, no, I have to find something else. And that was important. And I feel, if Brecht around so many years ago had already talked about using technology, I think there's a lot of potential that is still untouched and has not been used. There are so many things that can be actually regenerated and revoked from the past thinkers and the way they have actually tried to cope with the changes of their times as well. So I think because we are at a Wendepunkt, it is actually a transition in our lives. We are going to learn a lot from this. It's really going to be a learning process. Well, let's come to the next point, and that's about creativity. We all talked about creativity, being creative, but what exactly does it mean? Creative, we should, I think, start with the idea is it only about dancing? Is it only about being able to sing? Or is it, or just do drama, deliver dialogue very, very effectively, being a good orator? What is it actually to be creative? Perhaps that's one question that I want you to ponder upon, and let's discuss that. Because for a teacher, and that was one question that came up yesterday as well, and I think a lot of teachers have this feeling, yeah, I can't myself do this. How can I motivate my students to do it? Do I really have to be a dancer to teach dancing? Yes, I mean, ideally, yes, and that's how people do it. But I have my mother who does not sing actively, but she has still led me to singing. I have a father who cannot do sports, and he still led me into cricket. How is that possible? What has happened there? Who would like to go first? Swati, would you like to go first?
Gladly, because it is something that I think touches the hearts of all involved teachers, no? Engagierte Lehrer. And it is not possible that a teacher is something like an amalgamation of all wonderful things on earth. It is good enough that you are a teacher and you want to be a teacher. I think that's the first and foremost quality in a teacher, that you are happy to be a teacher. So I totally agree with you, and I so envy you for having parents who encouraged you to do different things, even if they were not masters of those arts. And I think a teacher can absolutely do this without any hassle. I mean, take me. I don't think people in the school where I went and participated in some dramas were the only noble souls to allow me to do that, and tolerant ones, etc., etc. But after that, I have never dabbled into acting at all. But that doesn't stop me from encouraging people to do it, because I think you asked a very important and pertinent question. What is creativity? Creativity, in my humble opinion, is connecting the dots. So if I'm talking about acting, if I'm talking about theater, I do not have to have only Brecht and the likes in my mind. I have to achieve my goal, my landscape. Why am I doing it? I am doing theater because I want my people to learn something in a different way, in a way which is way more lernerzentriert, lernerfreundlich, etc., etc. So as long as I am on the right path, and I can sense that. So whether it is singing, whether it is theater, whether it is dancing, whether it is a very simple sounding act like reading aloud, vorlesen, that is also an art. So to teach that, to feel the nuances, and I think the first thing what any dedicated teacher can do is, and they have been doing, each one of us has been doing it, to make it enjoyable. I mean, as long as the Spaß element is there, anything is possible. So to develop this basic thing that whatever you are doing is Spaß first and activity later. So to make that Spaß come alive, that's the foremost thing. So it is very much possible. I don't think every teacher has to be an entertainer herself. You have to dance like whoever. Not at all, not at all. You don't have to. I mean, all choreographers don't necessarily dance every time with their troupe. So we are fortunately somebody who can visualize things. And this art of visualization, it counts. It can create wonders. Why not? I mean, I remember a teacher, a very young teacher in our department, Saket Dekhne is his name. we were doing poetry. And this famous poem by Kurt Schwitters, Anna Blume, was there as part of the syllabus. And he said, I mean, Anna Blume, reading, understanding, grammar, this, that, everything is fine. But he encouraged the students to make a film out of it. So he encouraged two girl students to, actually enact the thing. And somebody who was not good at acting was made in charge of the camera. Somebody provided the tone, the sound. And that became a beautiful Literatur für Filmung in one sense, but a very poetic Realisierung of the Inhalt on a very different level. So things are possible. Of course, they're possible.
Lovely, connecting the two dots. Puneet.
Creativity, I think the minute you sort of start learning a foreign language, it forces you to be creative. Because you start with so little, right? You're given in the first, say, 10 days of class also, maybe your whole vocab is, 50 words? And we expect our students to express so much with it. And I think they're very creative with the little stuff that they know, and they do say what they're thinking. Maybe a little broken, maybe wrong, but they do sort of start thinking and say, this little bit that I've learned, how do I use it to create a sentence or create a thought and express it in front of others, and others understand me as well. For me, even that is great creativity. I think the minute you step into the foreign language classroom and start getting inputs little by little, and with that little input, you sort of make more and more and more out of it. I'm amazed always as to what all people can say with a little we've taught them. I said, "Arey, itna to padhaya hi nahi," and these people know more. So that is for me also creativity. Secondly, we also know, I think, that each one learns differently. It's something we've all, I think, all theories of foreign language teaching will accept that today. Some of us learn better through listening, the others learn better through writing. There's someone else who says, I learn better through watching a film. Some people have to touch things to be able to do it. And what I like today is that we have the possibility of playing with these things. If someone likes to listen more and they think they learn better by listening, then there are these possibilities of listening to podcasts, as was said earlier. But even our laser texts, which are there in the books, are today on CDs or are available online, and you can go and listen to them and say, okay, the reading doesn't do much for me, but if I listen to it, it works better. So all these creative forms are actually available to us. That's what I like today through this digital world, that these things have become accessible. At times affordable, at times not so affordable, but that they are available to us in some form or the other. And I think that calls also for that the people have been creative in saying there's not only one way of doing things. Here text, they just only have to be heard, they can be written, and written text can be spoken, and if someone learns better that way, then so be it. And if someone learns better by singing rap, then so be it. Or if someone learns better by acting in a small play, then so be it. Yeah, that we give them all these possibilities. And I think that's where the foreign language classroom has evolved a lot in fact. And we should actually open up our minds further and say, let's ask each one, how do you learn better? And give them that possibility through this art form, the art of writing, speaking, listening, acting, singing, rapping, and express themselves.
Freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice, yeah.
Yan Helge.
I think I couldn't agree more with everything that has already been said. Let me maybe just add, creating or being creative obviously is also always a function of reacting to something. So you are faced with a problem, you're faced with something you like, something you don't like, whatever, and you have a reaction. If it's an aesthetic reaction, if you write a text, if you sing a song, if you dance, then obviously we would call that aesthetic and art and everything. But just language, of course, itself is absolutely non-natural and in that sense aesthetic, simply because it's produced through the senses, it is received through the senses, and so on. For me, I mean, I do not teach the language like to language learners, but I get them shipped in by the dozen to be told about German literature and literary history and things like this. You're frozen. Am I also frozen?
It's okay. It's okay. You're
I'm
a
still
little...
here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, the internet connection seems to come and go a little bit. I was just saying that like I have to focus more on text selection, and there I see also the problems or the possibilities for language teaching. Like I try to select problems in, for example, the history of theater course that I teach, that students can relate to because they didn't go away. Psychological problems, madness didn't go away 200 years, like in the last 200 years. Money issues, relationship issues, family troubles, all of this is still there. So when we then see, okay, these are ways that people have addressed these problems, given them a form, this will lead probably into the category of performance for your next question. But an author has given some problem pragmatic or a very intriguing form that can then be seen from outside. Yeah, we can see the problem as it would or it could affect us, but it doesn't affect us directly in that moment. And through there, the students actually have this freedom to say, well, I can, in that sense, play anything because these problems are not my problems. Yeah, these interactions that we are playing, I do not have to say that this is me. I can play a woman, I can play whatever, I can play an Indian woman, which I am not. So things like this give the freedom to respond to many things that will always change. The way that we teach will always change. What we teach will always change. Language, culture, all of them are moving targets, so to speak. So we can never like have perfect didactics set in place. Everything develops. So we all are forced all the time to be creative.
Absolutely. Swati, you mentioned the term entertainer and fun. Now, I being a Goethe Lehrerin, I've also kind of always been, in fact, even during my training, you know, it was somehow kind of ingrained into me that my class has to be fun. This, however, is then also interpreted in a different way in among certain colleagues, for example, by certain colleagues. And they tend to say, well, why do I have to make something fun? Or why do I have to become an entertainer? Why do I have to entertain my students? They have come to learn and they need to learn, even if it is not fun. I'm sure you must have come across this many times. This also is kind of connected with the idea of entertainment, the entertainment industry. Let's look at that. So as a teacher, on the one hand, I've got this, right? And linked to that is this idea of entertainment being an industry where we want to satisfy the needs. Brecht said, I am not here to satisfy the needs of the students or the audience. I'm here to change them. I'm here to instruct them. So what do you say to this? This is a dilemma, I think, that a lot of us face. What do I do? Where do I bend? Till how much do I bend? If I see my students are not interested, and how much do I mold myself to satisfy their needs? This has also to do with the idea of the self-perception, or the in the larger context is the perception of a student being consumer. And the teacher, well, we are actually doing a service. Yeah, we are being paid. How do you see this whole sentence, the whole situation here? We are all actually, we are all betroffen by this, right? And how do we deal with this? This is happening everywhere at every stage, maybe not so much in the central universities, but in private institutions, yes. What happens? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely speak straight from the heart. I don't know how convincing it could be, but I think in most of the situations, I seek this policy honesty and just say the things that you are actually doing. You are absolutely right, Shruti. This is a huge dilemma. There, I think there is also a problem of translation. What I mean by Spaß is not just fun the way it is usually understood in English or in fun translated in, let's say, Indian languages. No? What I mean by Spaß is you just have to make them make sense of the things that they're doing in class. Fun does not mean that we are offering entertainment in form of some pleasurable experiences, that they have to be happy, they have to laugh, they have to feel entertained. Not at all, not all the times, because it is not possible to do that. And no good teacher who is aware of the job for which she is being paid, because no doubt we are being paid, but we are being paid to do a job. And a very clear definition of that job is necessary in the heads and minds and hearts of the teaching people. No? I sometimes like the German word that is very often used in the didactic sense or teacher training courses, Lehrperson. No? So this is really, really very important, that you, before standing in any way, whether virtual or real space, in front of the class, you should know, what am I here for? So as a teacher, I have always told myself, and that has somehow transpired through my actions, through my deliveries in the class, that I am not giving any instant gratification to anybody. I'm not here to satisfy, in quote unquote, anything. I'm here to just help them see things differently. All that a teacher needs to do that is patience. With some students, it happens like this. They see the point, you are absolutely on the same plane, on the same wavelength immediately. With some, it takes time. And for that, the teacher has to have Mitgefühl. You have to have a very empathetic soul. And you have to just give them that time, because people have different backgrounds. People have different financial backgrounds. People have different learning backgrounds. How I have evolved as a person before coming to this German class, because you have a heterogeneous group. Some are older than the others, some are already working, so they have a different career life, whereas some are just starting as students, some are housewives, some are whatever. I mean, I'm talking of a scenario which is there in Pune University, where we have these language classes as part-time courses. You might have a different situation, but I think with the word heterogeneous, you can easily relate. No? So patience is the key, but a very, very huge and stable amount of self-worth, self-respect, and a very clear idea about the definition of Lernziel, my goal as a teacher. That helps, because having fun or enjoying things, I would not translate this Spaß haben as having fun, but enjoying what I'm doing. So even if I'm doing at times a thoroughly grammatical, thoroughly cognitive exercise, I can make it an enjoyable exercise. Why not? The minute I make the applicability clear, why am I learning this? Because so and so and so. Then every exercise can be an enjoyable exercise. You don't have to always, dance and sing and have funny faces in the class. You're not a jester. You are somebody who makes the thing. I mean, yesterday Milind said it so beautifully, making visible visible. So the things that we're doing, they're actually visible. Why am I learning a language? Because it makes sense to learn a foreign language, and it is going to be applicable in many ways. So we are just making that visible.
Yeah, Milind, in fact, he's just said in the chat, Begreifen ist Vergnügung. Ja, auch das Begreifen ist an sich eine Vergnügung. Understanding is also a pleasure. To be able to understand what we're learning. That's what he said here. Puneet, please.
Okay, I do get a bit of a kind of funny feeling if somebody says entertainer. I would prefer to say that as teachers, what we should strive to do is make our classes as interesting as possible. The word fun I would avoid, and I would avoid the word entertainment. I'm not there. I don't think I'm there to entertain anybody. But yes, I do think it is almost my duty as a teacher to sort of make my class or whatever I present as interesting as possible. Even if it is a grammar topic, if you tell the students as to where it's leading, they do find it interesting and say, okay, that's what it is. And I understand now why we were saying from the first day this. it kind of makes it more interesting. To say that I have to start entertaining people and we constantly have these Höhepunkte in class, that's not possible. That is not advisable. So the dilemma for me was, I don't think I've ever felt it's a dilemma, because I've always looked at it from the point of view of saying it has to be interesting. I don't think there can be too much dilemma and say, should your class be boring or interesting, and then we have a problem, now kya kare? With fun, maybe you can have it, but and interesting, there's so many ways of making it interesting, from the choice of topics to how you present it, to sort of doing something different. It keeps, because making it interesting keeps not just the students motivated, it keeps you yourself motivated as well, which is
my question here would be only, what does interesting mean? How do I decide what is interesting? That becomes that's the point there, I guess. Do I look at my students' faces and say, no, that did not go well, maybe I should try out something else? They were not happy, or they didn't understand what I tried telling them. What is interesting? I sometimes feel, something is interesting for me. I might, just absolutely go gaga over post-World War history, but few students might think, okay, geht nicht, ma'am, we're a little bored. Should I stop teaching them that? Should I stop teaching them the history of drama just because they felt, oh God, this is not relevant for us, we don't want to learn? That's where it actually becomes little difficult.
Look, when I said interesting, it doesn't mean our students get to tell me what I'm going to teach. That's first of all not going to happen. That's why we have curricula, and that's why we have some things have to be done. Just that what you I was not talking about content.
You meant
some things just have to be done. They have to be done.
The point is taken, absolutely. Yeah, over to you. So, Yan Helge.
Let Puneet finish.
They are more or less done. I felt you have to, whatever you do, there is the content a student doesn't get to. Okay, there can be some things we can say, but it's in the Goethe class too, we say, okay, somebody's not interested in history too much, maybe don't stretch it out too long. But at the university, I feel people better know a little more. Even our students, I feel, at the Goethe-Institut need to know a little more about the background of things. Then to be able to understand the language better, and they are dealing with the country, a new culture, then they need to sort of understand these things. But they don't get to tell you what to teach.
Maybe from my perspective, I find this is a very interesting discussion, because it also is a discussion about our perceptions of ourselves. Like we all agree that Lehrperson, the teaching body or the teaching person, is a very central word used here. What is our self-image, and who are we actually teaching? Now, the first step, like in very straightforward didactics, is to think, okay, what does the group I am teaching need? So Bedarfsanalyse is always the first thing. So an assessment and analysis of the needs of the group. And here we have, just among the four of us, maybe 3 different groups. Yeah, we have institution that is a language instruction institution, the Goethe-Institut, the Max Müller-Barwan in India, that obviously somebody comes and says, I want to go to Germany for this, or I want to work for a company for a lot of money. I need B1, B2, C1, something like this. So they are very motivated. They are paying for the exercise. They have a clear goal. I don't need to even tell them why they are there. Whereas then when we come to different universities, but also other language learning settings like high schools, we kind of have to ask, well, do we say, okay, it's your decision whether you work or don't work, and then we have no problem letting you fail? This is what universities in Germany used to do, I should say, at this point. Because, well, if half of every year fails, then well, that's also odd. Why do they fail? Do they all study the wrong thing and then find something better? Or did they fail because the professors made some wrong choices? So it really depends on how we see what we are actually trying to help our students achieve. Do we try to help them achieve good knowledge of the German language for working in a company in India? Do we try to prepare them for a life in Germany? Do we prepare them for a higher educational degree in Germany or India? These are all then very different styles of teaching. And then also, now concluding this thought, coming back to the idea of interestingness or creativity in the classroom, fun, Freude, joy, whatever you want to call it, has to be used then in very different ways. If I sit in front of a group that is not very interested in a particular field of knowledge, area of knowledge, but it's in the curriculum, it has to be taught, I feel it's necessary that it has to be taught, then, well, I kind of have to try to up the joy factor a little bit by trying to make them even more interested in it than I would otherwise have to do. So for me, this there cannot be a very clear and direct answer here, because it always depends on the context, especially then for someone like me who has never stepped a foot in an Indian university, although I had fellow Indian students when I was studying, and although obviously I know my colleagues and my students now through the virtues of the internet. This kind of like entertainment or serious entertainment kind of is maybe something that really depends on the context. But we have a goal, but like everything, we have to be open as the Lehrperson in charge of a group. Yeah. So I mean, to a certain extent, if nobody enjoys it, if nobody likes it, if nobody's interested, then you would agree that, well, we have to be open to the change, and not just the students have to be open to what they're going to hear from me. So
that's
it's like a balance.
Point.
Yeah, I have to be
very,
open,
very
they have to be
point.
open.
The self-image of the teacher. Yes. So now let's go on to the next point, and that's performance, right? So we've been talking about performance, performativity. Manfred Schever also talked about performance. He defined performance as the form, working with the form. Formative, the word formative is also inside the word formative. So because we are leading, so this has to kind of, through performance, we are actually then also leading to the personality development of our students. Yeah, so that is also something that is important. Confidence building, learning, Erweiterung des Horizonts. There's so many things that come with the formation. So it's actually a very, very broad topic. Let's stick to the form. And we've also kind of talked about the form and, the changing of forms. So one question, while I was also kind of working with this, and the second thing is also, I'll elaborate on a little bit. So while I was working on this experiment, the question came to my mind, well, can I change the text? Can I change the text with which I'm working? Now I've got Heinrich Böll, it's a Kurzgeschichte. Should I teach Kurzgeschichte as a form, as a genre, or am I, as a teacher now, allowed, or do I have the freedom to change the text and look at it from a different perspective, or at least deal with it in a different way once we have dealt with the short story? Yes, Jan-Helge, can you hear me?
I just wanted to interject, like to cut. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. To cut the discussion short, like whatever you change, there will then be no, you're telling you that you mustn't.
No, we can hear you, but your screen is frozen. Well, no, I think, well, so the idea is basically, yeah, so adapting texts. How free are we as teachers? Yeah, and creativity is also, as you said, yeah, it's about, it's actually working around with the different forms of learning. As Puneet, you also just mentioned, you talked about the different various ways. So that is one thing. And so at a level, especially you saw all my students are either at an A1 level or an A2 level. And I want them to study at a university. Now that's a context. Now also another context where I want them to study and get to know the authors, eminent authors who have worked on who have contributed to the German literature, for example, in philosophy, etc. How do I go about working with this? Do my students always have to be B1 level, C2 level to be able to then start working with small texts? To have to wait? How can I work with texts and in a creative way and still discuss the main ideas and teachings of so many authors and philosophers and sociologists that Germany and German-speaking countries have produced? How do I work with this? And this is, I think, also one very important point. We always define language education, and we separate language from Landeskunde. We separate language from culture. That's the traditional way of working around with it. What do we do? And that's how people, our colleagues, I'm sorry to say, but colleagues as in from out of our circles, we're talking about people who are doing other subjects, content subjects, they perceive of us saying, oh, they're doing fun classes, they just do language. So what is this? Where it starts here and it goes there, and it's a vicious circle, actually. Would you like to respond to this?
I think Yan Helge is now back. He was saying something. Maybe he should complete what he was saying.
I can try. I have switched my internet now, so maybe it works better. No, it doesn't. Maybe it does. Can you hear me?
It is.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Much better.
What I wanted to say was about the changing of the text. Didn't we have that example where some director of the Freie Bühne or the Schauspielhaus in Berlin immediately said what the example we heard a couple of days ago, that this is not allowed, to change the context to modern India. You have to perform it the way it is. So, I mean, to cut the long discussion short, if you listen to these kinds of people, then of course you have to bow down and never change anything that the great authors themselves from millions of hours of thinking about problems have arrived at. The text is the conclusion and we must kneel before it. But so this is obviously really not the case. You can change anything you like. What I think is that the form that we are talking about in the context of performance, giving a form to something, these texts give form to an experience. And this experience is maybe in a lot of the cases at the heart of what we're teaching. We're not necessarily so focused on teaching them, I don't know, the way that stanzas are arranged or the way that rhythm works necessarily only. We're not on this level interested in the form, but we are interested in this preserved form of human experience in the text. And then, of course, you have to adapt it. But maybe I let the others go on first to have a little bit more discussion on this big point.
Swati?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for this topic at all in this discussion, because it does touch our lives every now and then. And as far as your colleagues from other disciplines are concerned, who think and say, oh, they're having fun, it's just a language class, let them envy us, let them. It's good. Now I come to the serious point. Changing or adapting a text, etc., etc. I think before one opens this whole issue of adapting a text or adapting to a text, etc., etc., one can talk a little about the entire business of perception and how one perceives a particular piece of reality, and that it is a piece of reality. It is not the reality, but it is a piece of reality. And I'm sure everyone who's present right now in this virtual space this evening knows the film Lola Rent. And this Lola Rent is a very good example of how the same thing, the same content can be perceived as 3-4 different stories and can be presented it that way. So I think somewhere one can say, okay, this particular story by, let's take the same story by Heinrich Böll, was his perception of, critiquing the Wirtschaftswunderzeit and this entire business of consumption and overconsumption, and how consumption can lead to an empty life, etc., etc. But that is one way of perceiving things. And then one can simply be loyal to Heinrich Böll and say, this is Heinrich Böll, and here he ends. And now we open the floor for our perception of these two characters moving in this arena of consumption and doing something to earn a living, and then etc., etc. And then you can simply invite everyone in this process of being creative, being performative, etc., etc. I'll give you a small example. We were doing, the course was on translation. So after we had done, theories of translation, theories of perception, and this eternal dilemma of the author and the translator, and what does a translator actually do, etc., etc., then we were doing something hands-on. So there were 2 poems by Goethe, Erlkönig and Gefunden. And one student who's an accomplished Kathak dancer, she said, I don't really want to translate this in any language, be it Marathi, be it Hindi, be it English. I would like to perform on these 2 poems. So it was a translation, underline, bold, italics, everything, but in a completely different form, beautiful form. So then, we had a nice performance, and as part of the Students' Festival that we organize every year, twice a year, in fact, and then we put it on YouTube channel, etc., etc. So that was her perception of the very word translation. So if you allow that, I don't think you're upsetting Goethe, but at the same time, you are creating a beautiful stage,
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'd like to go to the next point, and that would be the last point of the discussion as well. You've already touched upon it. So you said you have an annual Students' Festival. What do you do? What kind of work is being done by the Pune University, for example, to promote the arts, especially in the context of foreign language education? I know of so many people who really have, participated, and also, I've also watched the performances on Facebook of the recent student festival. Akshay shared the link with me, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Would you please like to elaborate it? And then I'd like Puneet to also please tell us a little bit about.
I'll do it with delight, because we are absolutely privileged to have more than 1,200 students at language level, and then joined by the students at master level. So we have the student festival twice a year, once at the beginning of the academic year, twice a year. Once in the beginning of the academic year and once at the end. And generally that end comes towards February, so we call it Februar Fest. And the link that you just got was Februar Fest. So in the pre-corona times, we always had this common platform, and that was the best part of it, for learners, from people who have started learning or they had barely learned. I mean, you can imagine in the month of August when our session begins, they have learned a couple of weeks, and still the enthusiasm is so strong that they participate in all kinds of things. So they experiment with poems, they experiment with skits, they experiment with Märchen, fairy tales, and they adapt. That is the best instance of adaptation. I mean, I have had an adaptation of Cinderella where the shoe fits the mother. And I mean, we said, why not? Why not? Age is just a number. So the young prince does not have to marry equally young Cinderella, but he is now going to marry the mother. Why not?
Klasse.
So in the pandemic, the last year was very crucial for us, because we were suddenly concerned, oh, what do we do with these beautiful festivals? Do we just cancel them? I said, no way. We're not canceling anything. We are going ahead with all our programs with their guest lectures. And I'm so happy and privileged that we could also win you for one of those guest lectures. So Student Festival this year just went virtual, and we had so many things. People had now, the problem of matching the time, I was so happy to see your students doing this Loriot, each sitting in his own, her own drawing room and doing it. But in case of groups, it was sometimes difficult. So they simply recorded their parts and then merged. So they are brilliant. My God, the students are brilliant. They learned so many things on their own, editing, for example, putting music, giving the background music, etc., etc. So just wonderful. So two things can always happen. You can have just like whether it is a short story, the genres, what we call short story, poetry, translations as a separate Gattung. Those are the things where they feel, yes, I can now, cross the line between the stage and the publicum, and I can just experiment. So if it is translation, then they feel, oh, I can translate it in a way that I can relate to my own life right now. And the best example this time on the Students' Festival was, there was a talk of different epochen and different genres that have emerged through so many years. And one of the students who was supposed to be the anchor, she said, I'm going to be Goethe. And Goethe has come for this student festival in Pune, so who's 200 something odd years. And there was a performance on Hörspiel. So suddenly Goethe asked, oh, what is this Hörspiel? In my days, there was no Hörspiel.
Oh,
there was a Verfilmung, because we had given the students, we always organize a lot of competitions, and the winning performances are played and staged during this festival. So lockdown was a major theme this time. So the Verfilmungen, which emerged on lockdown, so Goethe suddenly stood up and said, what is this film? I have never heard this. In my day, etc., etc. So very creatively, they could just, that was used as an interlink to the next performance,
Lovely.
So Goethe talking about his ignorance. Imagine the daring, the guts. Goethe expressing his ignorance in front of everyone who has just learned German for a couple of months. Yeah. So,
excellent. We could go on and on. I would like to have
on
conversation about it. Really, we've got to continue this.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to quickly go to Puneet. Puneet, please also tell the audience about the kind of work the Goethe-Institut does in this area.
Yeah, well, over the past 1 year online, we have tried to do a share of cultural projects as well. One which I would like to sort of highlight is we sort of ask students, the school students, to do something on Dasera and send it to us. It was around Dasera time, and the film which kind of did the best was these kids who were sitting literally in various parts of northern India, most of them, from Lucknow, Delhi, and there was I think one from Punjab somewhere, made a film on Dasera where they said the evil was Corona. And and they had that Corona, that little thingy that is there for that virus, and this the weapons that Ram fought Corona with were hand sanitizer and mask, and and the Lakshman Rekha was there. You're not to go out. It's a lockdown. So there's a Lakshman Rekha around the house. So it was really, really interesting how the students kind of could transfer the whole concept of the Dasera to this Corona problem that we were facing at that time in October. It was still that was the time the figures were really, really high. So they kind of showed that, and I said they were all sitting in various areas. Of course, the teacher helped coordinate. But like the technical aspect of it also, that they all shot at first with a green background. And then they sort of superimposed little pictures, little images on that, and stood in front of those, and then did the whole thing. And what a wonderful film it became. It's on a website if anybody's interested. Secondly, also, we did a project mostly with universities on diversity, where we had said that diversity is so important in inclusion, and we gave people total freedom that they could send us anything they liked on that topic. And we received some wonderful entries, some wonderful paintings, first of all, which for people who didn't really know German so well. But the number of poems we received kind of shook me up. I never thought I'd see so many poems come in German on the topic. And that too, we've got it on our website in the 3D gallery. We put it all up, and anybody can just go in there and have a look. And I find one of the biggest examples of what one can do with creatively with the very little German is how many of our students think they're champions of writing Elfchen. So many of them think they can just put together 11 words and create something, and they do a really good job of it. That's the very basic thing we do all the time, actually. Yeah. And of course, what we have done, or I've been a little more active with in the last 1 year, has been we're doing a lot of readings. Also readings with Indian language things, German stories which have been translated in Indian languages. Is also something which has been done recently. I think Shruti Jain translated Swiss novelist Francola. She did a reading and we had it in German, Hindi, and Marathi. And before that, at the Pune Lit Fest, also we had Leo Thomas stories, and I think that's going to become a regular affair with InDaF. I think every month they're planning something now. That's happening somewhere out there. And next year, the Goethe-Institut, this year actually, if everything permits us, we've invited the group Theaterstrahl. They're a group which work mostly with mimicry and without not too much language, where we've asked students to come, where we will invite students, and this group is doing workshops with them online, and the students are then encouraged to make their own little short skits. Let's see how well it works out. We are hoping we'll be able to get the group over this year. If not this year, looks a little tough to me. Then next year sometime that we do that. But I think given a chance, students come up with the most creative of stuff, and we keep trying to push them to do so.
And I think that's the most important thing. We've got to make the chance, to give them the chance, unless to make that event, to create that event so that they can actually also then perform in that event, in that context. Thank you so much.
Given a chance, students respond. Given a chance,
absolutely,
everybody responds.
Absolutely. So I really thank all three of you again. So with that, we come to this, the end of this panel discussion. Yeah, Yan Helge, thank you. Puneet, Swati, it was really a pleasure discussing such important points. I'm sure people who are listening to this have also, they've followed us, and also kind of, they've thought with us, and we have also touched upon some very important points. I'd like to then quickly do a vote of thanks. I'm looking at the vote as well. Yeah, so I'll just quickly do the vote of thanks. So this is the end. Well, I'm reminded of the famous American author and religious leader, Gordon B. Hinckley, who said, "True wisdom cannot be obtained unless it is built on a foundation of true humility and gratitude." And gratitude is what I want to show you, express today to all of you who have joined me in this endeavor. This has been such a lovely experience for me. I would like to thank all the luminaries, scholars, friends, and colleagues who joined me to make this webinar a success. Really, I will call it a success. I have enjoyed myself thoroughly. I hope you have too. My special thanks to the speakers, Dr. Milind Ramme, for his support, for his guidance, and the kind of person that he is. Mr. Consistent, Mr. Reliable, and Mr. Humble, as in just a strong pillar. Milind, thank you so much. Professor Manfred Schewe, happy birthday to you once again. We're missing you, but I'm sure you will, I'm going to share the YouTube link with you, and I'm sure you will be able to see what we did today. Really would appreciate what the students, if you reacted to what our students have done, we really would be happy. And the session chairs, Professor Rajendra Dingle, Professor Madhusani, I just cannot thank you enough. I just felt like I was in family, I just felt so reassured to have both of you standing by my side. And the same goes with you, Puneet. Just there, I cannot thank you enough. Yeah, Dr. Swati Acharya, Yan Helge Weidemann, du bist wirklich so ein Schatz. Yeah, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Swati, it was really, really lovely to have you and listen to you and to your pertinent comments and good analysis. I really love that. It has really been an honor to have all of you with us. I thank my director, Professor Gopa Naik, for believing in me and wholeheartedly supporting this endeavor. I said, Gopa, I want to do something like this. And she said, excellent, go ahead. That was it. That's it. I didn't have to do anything else. A big thanks to our design and print team, especially Mr. Yatendra Pal Singh, for being super patient. I say super because there's a little story behind it. He had to make so many final versions, and then finally he got tired and he said, now this is the super final version and I'm going to change it. So therefore, thank you so much for being super patient while designing the creative poster that all of you saw. I want to thank Mr. Vidyut Kumar and his team for their IT support. And of course, the most deserving of my deepest gratitude are my students, my lovely, lovely students, Devanjan Chattaraj, for the excellent performance on the history of German theatre. Aryaman, Anushka Singh and Sharma, both Anushka Singh and Anushka Sharma, Tanea, Sanidhya, Shreyansh, Ryan, Aditya, Erika, Aishwarya, Ashish, Soshri, Shubh, Shochitro, and of course, someone who was not my student, but Chiku, for trusting me totally before making the plunge. It was a huge risk that you all took. You took the plunge into this unknown world and you just totally trusted me. And I cannot thank you enough. And last but not the least, I thank theatre itself for teaching us to perform in order to find our own meaning and to become resilient in these trying times. I'd like to end my speech with a continuation of what Anushka Sharma began. This is the adaptation of the parody of Corona Unana. Here I go. Wer nicht stirbt, der wird noch stärker. Kein Zweifel dran. Kopf hoch und einfach durchhalten. Schreite voran. Neue Gedanken, neue Wege. Langen wir an. Zusammen kriegen wir das noch hin. Das ist der Plan. Oh, bald ist diese Pandemie nicht mal eine Endemie. Oh, Gesundheit und Genesung, wir stehen kurz vor der Lösung. Weg Corona und na. Das ganze Land steht still, Corona und na. Hab keinen Bock auf Quarantäne, nee. In den Schulen sind jetzt Kinder und Cricket gibt es wieder. Corona Unana. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, if you would like to, please switch on your cameras. We'd like to just quickly have a quick informal
Shruti,
hello.
thank you so much for the unloss.
It was lovely.
Oh,
you're all there. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, Uncle, Professor Dingle. It was lovely.
Shruti,
And please, I request all my
amazing.
students to please switch on their cameras too.
You sing beautifully, Shruti. Wow.
Hey, Madhu, you're there. That's great.
Yeah, I joined late.
I have to give an applause, Shruti. It was wonderful. You're such a delight always. You're such a delight always.
Totally.
Oh, lovely. Let's take a print. I would like to take a screenshot of this moment. Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. Lovely. Thank you so much, my dear students. You rocked it. Bravo. Thank you so much. A very happy Holi to all of you.
You too.
And let's hope to meet and reconnect again. I hope you've filled in the form, the Google form, so that we're able to keep in touch. Have you? Or should I share the link again?
I have.
I get it. I came in late.
Shruti, I couldn't.
Right,
I was too immersed in the performance.
Jan Helge, could you please quickly just reshare the link? Thank you so much. That'll be great. So thank you so much. And I really don't have any words. I was gutted, guys. I was gutted to see you perform. I was really happy. You know, this is the occasion when you should have actually come together and partied. We can't even do that. But I really, from the bottom of my heart, reach out to each one of you and I want to thank you for having put up such a lovely show. This was really, really, really lovely. Thank you so much.